Hey, what's going on, y'all? Welcome to a new episode of the Late Night Lake Show podcast powered by Prize Pick. Before we get into our episode with Jovan Buha of The Athletic, wanted to let you guys know that the Late Night Lake Show is always powered by Prize Picks. Enter promo code LNLS. Figure out your parlays, make it pretty, and then, get it matched in case it doesn't work out with promo code LNLS. So I appreciate the support, as always, from the Prize Pick family. All right, Jovan, it's I don't even know what day it is. It's Monday, February 6th, year of our Lord 2023. This time last week, we weren't even in this state of mind to even be thinking about a Kyrie trade. It's so funny what happens in the course of 4 days, but here we are. On the other end of reality, the Los Angeles Lakers did not end up being able trading for Kyrie Irving. He ends up in Dallas for Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, a first, a couple of seconds. Markieff Morris, former Laker, is heading down to Dallas as well. Jovan, you've been boots on the ground for all of this. I don't even know if you slept yet, brother, but can you just kind of walk us through, man, how this Kyrie trade negotiations unfolded, and then let us know, did you honestly, did you think that the Lakers had a fighting chance in this negotiations with the Brooklyn Nets?
Yeah, well, I do. I do think they had a chance. I know there's been some reporting on, Brooklyn's objective to not trade Kyrie to the Lakers. I've heard some mixed stuff on that. I do think it probably was an objective, but that's different than a mandate. I don't think it was a hard and fast, we're just not gonna deal him to the Lakers. I think they wouldn't have talked to the Lakers in that case if that were what they really were gonna do. And I also think at the end of the day, teams can be spiteful and whatnot, but I think the Nets have been a relatively smart organization. Sean Marks comes from San Antonio, and I think at the end of the day, if they felt the Lakers had the best package, I think they would have gone with that. And I think really ultimately what it showed was they preferred players over picks, because we know the Lakers put the two unprotected 2027 and 2029 picks on the table, and ultimately the difference was, the gap in value in Brooklyn's eyes was they valued Spencer Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith more than Russ and the extra pick. And, as we've kind of heard since the summer, basically to trade Russ, it's been Russ and a pick to kind of get to neutral value. The adding in the pick kind of makes Russ a neutral value, contract. So if you kind of take out Russ and a pick, then the package is basically a Lakers pick versus two Nets players that are positive contracts, positive role players, plus a pick in 2 seconds. And of course, the Lakers could have thrown more in, but the key for them was they wanted Kyrie to sign that 2-year extension, and they were afraid of basically Dwight Howard all over again from 2013. Where they trade for him, it looks like he's going to be their center of the future. At that point, a popular kind of line of thinking was stars never leave LA. Everybody wants to be in LA. That's really when around then was when it really got, kind of glamorized of the free agent meetings, and LeBron kind of started it with the decision, but then it was every summer, the top free agents or the top stars would
Justin
be taking
Timberlake
meetings.
Coming in. Doing
But it was always if you remember, that was when it kind of started to the league kind of started to be, I think, transition more into the haves and have-nots in that regard, where it was the stars were always meeting with the two LA teams, the two New York teams, Chicago, Miami, maybe a Dallas or a Boston, but it was always the big teams. And I think for the Lakers, their fear was, we throw the kitchen sink at the Nets. I mean, number one, they might not even accept it, but even if we do, and let's just say they accept it, if Kyrie walks in 3 months, now, we don't have, we lost out on Austin and Max, who are, relatively cost-controlled young guys. Obviously, Austin's going to be a restricted free agent, but, Max, they got under contract for another year. Austin is someone they believe could be a starter or key bench player for them moving forward. Then, potentially throwing in a pick swap or two all of a sudden, like, you basically have given up all your tradable assets at least through next summer. So I think for them, there was just a lot of, and it's hard to have confidence in, what is Kyrie Irving going to do? We've seen him go to Boston and then, go to Boston and say he's going to commit there for the long term. That situation blew up quickly. Go to Brooklyn with his best friend and Kevin Durant. And obviously Kevin Durant had to sign off on him getting traded and be okay with that. And looks to be staying in Brooklyn, at least for the time being. We'll see what happens with that. But so I just think with Kyrie and the way that things have gone the last few years, then there was also the moral component of the Lakers were, I had heard earlier in the season, weren't, kind of felt like they dodged a bullet with the whole Kyrie situation, with everything that happened with the, sharing the anti-Semitic documentary off of Amazon, and just kind of his reluctance to apologize at first and kind of doubling down on it. They're kind of this might have been a blessing in disguise where we didn't have to deal with this. And, so I think for them, this came together really quickly in terms of obviously this popped up on a Friday, and then it just became the teams that felt they had a chance or were desperate enough to go for him started putting together the packages for the Lakers that started to increase. First it was Russ and a pick, and then eventually going up to Russ and 2 picks, but they weren't willing to include Max or Austin or any pick swaps unless they got that assurance that Kyrie was going to sign the 2-year extension. So obviously for him, there was financial incentive to not do that and to go into unrestricted free agency and, sign the 4-year deal that he can sign. So I think for the Lakers, I do think Brooklyn had, was looking to trade him to anywhere else. But ultimately, if the Lakers had, I think, better players available, honestly, I think Brooklyn would have taken the package.
That's a story we hear often. The Lakers just had better players. A lot of things
apply to a lot of things.
Right yeah, go ahead.
Man. I think to your point, I think it just came down to those role players and still being in that to be able to compete and win, and KD still being there. I think something that came out too, KD and Dorian Finney-Smith are also good friends. He's also a really good 3-and-D wing player. You could make an argument that he's definitely top of the class there. So
I actually think Dorian's more the prize than Spencer, to be honest.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Don't it feel like that? Yeah.
Dorian's the ideal role player, I think, the ideal modern 3-and-D wing you want.
He fits there perfectly. I mean, they're going to have to make a decision between those two and Royce O'Neal, who's going to be starting, right? And maybe Spencer makes sense coming off the bench, have that punch there. But, I mean, we can't really compete there, right? We don't really have the role players. Even if we do throw in, the Max Christie or Austin Reeves, does that really help the Brooklyn Nets right now to win or compete out in the East? But yeah, I mean, the way you laid it out, I mean, it starts to make sense, right? There's a lot, like Ricky mentioned earlier. Did we even have a chance or punch our chance?
Did we have a seat at the table, or we out at the kids' table?
Lakers had a seat at the table.
Let you know.
The one thing I'll say, though, as the Athletics' Shams Charania reported, there was a lack of communication between the two sides on Sunday. So I don't know if that was as simple as the Lakers just kind of feeling, hey, we made our best offer and our offer is not changing. So you know what it is. If you're going to accept it, you can accept it. If you're not, you're not. But I do think it was interesting that the Lakers didn't go back Sunday before ultimately Kyrie got traded. And then Shams also had the nugget in his story that last offseason, the Lakers were granted permission to speak with Kyrie and his representative, which is his stepmom, and talk to him about a potential trade. And the Lakers did not follow up on that. So
what the hell is up with that? I saw that. What? Why? Were they just distancing themselves?
I don't have a good answer on that, to be honest with you. It is interesting. I think there was a sense with the Lakers too, where I think, kind of similar to going back to, this is over a decade ago, but the Carmelo Anthony situation with Denver, New York, where, and I guess in some ways the Anthony Davis situation a little bit with the Lakers, but I think the Lakers felt they could just sign Kyrie outright in the summer, and Russ is going to be coming off the cap, and as long as they make the right move with that, if they do end up trading Russ and keep their cap sheet clean, like they can create upwards of $32 million in cap space and, potentially sign Kyrie. Obviously he's looking for more than that, but that's the most they could offer. So I think there was an element of like on their side, maybe like a little bit of passivity on why do we have to give up all this stuff for Kyrie when we can probably just sign him next summer? And, we know he doesn't want to be in Brooklyn anymore. We know that situation's probably going to blow up. So let's just wait it out and just sign him. But, so, I mean, that's my like best, I would say, guess on that. But it is kind of weird to me that you would make such a strong offer. You would have those conversations. And then for whatever reason, you wouldn't follow up. And then quickly after, he ends up getting shipped elsewhere. So I do think like Brooklyn really wanted at least one of the young guys, and the Lakers, that was where they drew the line in the sand, was like, and I think people are going to make jokes on social media. I've already seen it of like, oh, you didn't trade for Kyrie because of Austin Reeves. But like, there's no guarantee that just throwing Austin Reeves in was going to complete the deal. But I think for the Lakers, it was just, I think they're trying to kind of right some of the wrongs that they've made through the years where like they have undervalued young guys and they have probably overspent in trades and given up too much. And I think for them, they were like, we're giving you the two arguably best picks available on the market right now. And we're giving you this giant expiring deal in Russ. And like, you can reroute those picks. You can reroute Russ. Like they were looking at potential, 3-team deals. Like, so I think the Lakers felt they made a competitive, like strong offer. And ultimately, again, it really depended on which direction Brooklyn wanted to go. If they were going to blow it up and also trade KD, I think the Lakers package made more sense of just, maybe they cave ultimately and throw like Max in it. And then it's like, okay, we get a couple picks, we get an expiring deal, we get Max. Like now we have something here on top of whatever we get it for KD, but they wanted to remain competitive. And if you're going to want to remain competitive, obviously I think Dallas's package is better if that's your goal. We could disagree on the goal, and I think Brooklyn probably should have blown it up. But if they're going to try to remain competitive, Dallas's offer ultimately just made more sense.
I think the other big factor too, sorry to just step in, is that Dallas made the offer without even having verbal agreement or commitment from Kyrie that he's going to be signing anything.
So I think a huge risk.
That's probably another thing that the Lakers were thinking about, that, hey, I doubt any of these other teams are going to be making, strong headway probably over the course of Sunday or Monday or whatever it is, and take this big risk, right? Does it really make sense? There's only, that's the other thing. There's only like 3 or 4 teams that are really vying for Kyrie. It's not like, another big star comes up to market. There's like 8 or 10, 15 teams lined up. It was just 3 to 4. So maybe there was something of that in the back of their mind where I don't really see Dallas or any of these teams really taking that risk unless they get that commitment from Kyrie or something, some sort of conversation there.
Yeah. And I also think, I think when it first broke, I had heard initially like it was probably going to go till the deadline on Thursday because Brooklyn really wasn't sure what they wanted to do. Like they do we want to trade? Because again, this is kind of similar to what happened last summer. It was the opposite order where KD asked out first, then Kyrie asked out, then they were considering first, potentially trading Kyrie, and then it was like, well, we want to figure out the KD situation first. Then they reconciled with both of them. So I think there was initially some skepticism of, is Kyrie even going to be available, or is this just a massive, power play to get some leverage so they finally give him that extension? But obviously as it played out, I think by Saturday it was kind of clear, like, no, they're actually moving him. It's just a matter of what's the package and what are they looking for? And I think you heard different things in terms of, did they want players? Did they want picks? But ultimately, I think Dallas kind of presented the best of both worlds. I thought Phoenix's package, although Phoenix has been denying that they offered that, I thought that was interesting because, like, Chris Paul and Jay Crowder on this team, like, I think that would have been interesting, at least in Brooklyn. Obviously, Chris Paul isn't even what he was last year, but I think, like, I like Jay Crowder. So, but yeah, the Clippers had their offer, and so I think overall, like, I think the one thing to be encouraged by, if I'm a Laker fan, is they were willing to give up both picks, and we know that had been a thing that the fan base had been pushing for since last summer, and they finally found a deal that they felt was worth it, and they were willing to do that. So, I mean, we could quibble again about the value of Austin and Max, and if they should have just thrown the kitchen sink and said, hey, like, LeBron might only have a couple years left, so let's just go all in with Kyrie. They made it work before. We have confidence LeBron could get through to him, could keep him in LA, could keep him in check. Like, maybe that would have been a good strategy, but I do think they went for it and they made a competitive offer. And again, like they could have offered more, but it's not without risk. And we could easily see this Kyrie situation blow up in Dallas, and a few months from now be looking like, hey, the Lakers once again kind of dodged, because he just has had no semblance of consistency for several, basically since he left Cleveland. And, he's left every team with a trail of fire on his way out. So I think, from a talent perspective, obviously top 15 player gives the Lakers, 3 top 15 guys. I think you're a contender at that point, but at the same time, there's a lot of risk, and the Lakers already have some risk with LeBron and AD and their health.
I thought you were about to say that we're going to get to the summer and we're doing this all over again, where the Lakers are now interested in bringing Kyrie Irving in.
I think it's possible. I wouldn't rule it out.
There we go.
But yeah. I would say, obviously the incumbents are going to be the favorite. Dallas is going to be the favorite to keep him. And then if you're the Lakers, you also have to weigh, like, if he's willing to leave, that's like another situation that he kind of failed in or flamed out of, or whatever term you want to use. So like, it's we'll see. I think you can't rule it out. LeBron has obviously made it clear how he feels about Kyrie.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wrote like he basically did everything except for like blatantly just come out and say like, I want Kyrie, but he essentially has done that through his tweets and him saying it was a duh question. So, and then the interview he did today with ESPN. So I think LeBron's made it clear, but I'm interested to see what the Lakers do in these next 3 days, and then potentially this summer with what becomes available, if anything.
You're interested. Hell, we are interested, Jovan, and I think we're about to segue to what now is ahead. We did what the past is in the past, y'all. We can't keep sitting on this. Kyrie Irving's not going to be a Laker at least for another 4 to 5 months. So, adios, Kyrie. Good luck in Dallas. Enjoy the no state tax. Hope you and Luka have some great highlight moments together. Anyways, all right. Lakers now try to pick up the pieces and move forward ahead. Which, by the way, do you think anybody in the building cares that this is clearly a cry to get Russ out the build? Like, I understand that it's Kyrie Irving and LeBron is very excited about the possibility of having him, but that kind of goes directly right in the face of Russell Westbrook walking out the door in that trade. Do you think there's any animosity, any issues, or just they already don't seem like they're the best of friends, right? They're good enough as co-workers. Do you think that's going to have any impact on the Lakers' chemistry or lack thereof for forever, the foreseeable future?
Yes, I do. I think it's hard not to look at it that way, because really the only way financially the Lakers could get Kyrie Irving was to trade Russell Westbrook. They could not, after trading Kendrick Nunn, they couldn't trade Rui. They couldn't trade Rui in that package. They could only do a separate 1-for-1 or single deal, single player deal with Rui. Okay. So that's another thing, right? That's another limitation for them right now, where like Rui, could only be included in a bigger package 2 months after the trade, but obviously that's going to be past the trade deadline. So Rui could be sent off in a one-off, but he can't be aggregated in a bigger package. So if you just look at the contracts, even if they rounded together all the other contracts, I mean, number one, it would get to like 9 or 10 players. And number two, it just wouldn't add up to enough for Kyrie. So inherently trading for Kyrie meant trading Russ. And yes. I think that's kind of the awkward part of all this is, LeBron, and I'm just going to say, like, if you follow the right people in Russ's circle, you've seen some stuff from Russ's circle, kind of talking about how
Been a
they
guest in
feel
our
some type
spaces.
they feel some type of way.
Yeah.
His brother and one of his close friends, posted something on Instagram today. So I think there's definitely some animosity. I don't, obviously, we're dealing with the whole situation with John Morant and his friends, and like, someone's friends don't necessarily represent or speak for them, but there are people close to Russ who have already voiced their displeasure with LeBron and Phil Handy tweeting and kind of voicing their pro Kyrie backing. So I think again, we haven't heard from Russ yet. He talked in New Orleans, but LeBron, kind of since he talked before LeBron talked, and then LeBron said what he said, and then he had the tweet after Kyrie was traded to Dallas. So like, we haven't talked to Russ since then. I'm gonna be interested to see what he says tomorrow. Most likely we'll get him tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, I can't help but feel that there's got to be some tension there. For what it's worth, like normally when we go to practice, we see those guys to the side in their shooting competition. Today it was AD, LeBron and Rui. LeBron didn't participate in practice, but Russ was kind of off to the side. Sometimes he's done by the time we get in there. He doesn't want to be shooting in front of us or whatever. So like, that's not necessarily out of the abnormal, but it was just something kind of interesting. And then we did request to speak with him, and he didn't speak today at practice. So I mean, I gotta think he's not like thrilled about his teammate basically asking for him to be traded, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to be something where like there's this giant beef either that needs to be. It means Russ has to be traded, or it's irreconcilable. So, but yeah, I mean, I think we'll have a better answer when both LeBron and I think for LeBron's sake, it's almost better if he breaks it tomorrow, just because he can kind of avoid some of the trade stuff, because it'll all be about him breaking the record versus the trade stuff or him and Russ. But if he doesn't break it tomorrow, that's really going to be what I think the press conference is going to be about.
Yeah, I mean, even funnier so, right? They'll get up to the trade deadline, and then if the Lakers do make a move, hell, there's not going to be bodies in the build. Like, you're not going to have those players for that Milwaukee game on Thursday, right? So it's just like, all right, now you're going to break it out Thursday in a blowout. And, fingers crossed that's not the situation. But yeah, a lot of different things going on with those LeBron comments and how different people are perceiving them. So, one thing that didn't happen was LeBron calling out the Lakers organization. He said, it sounds like that, an offer was made, they tried, and, now refocused on the roster moving forward. This roster, as everybody who supports the purple and gold knows, it needs some improvement. We are seeing names still floating around, rumors starting to pick back up after that Kyrie 4-day saga, right? And now we're here. We're seeing teams like Utah. We're seeing teams like Charlotte. We're seeing teams like San Antonio pick back up, and then we're seeing that nice team that's got 4 starters or 4 rotation players in Toronto that's saying, "Hey, we might be open for business ourselves." Jay, just open court right now. What are you hearing as of this moment on February 6th as far as the Lakers' updated options as far as improving the roster?
Yeah, well, as I reported last night, Toronto and Utah are the 2 names I've heard the most, and I think those probably are the best 2 options. Like, San Antonio, Josh Richardson, Doug McDermott. I like Jakob Poeltl, but then you're sliding 80 to the 4 more. Like, I don't love that. I don't love the Charlotte pieces. Like, I like PJ Washington. Is that worth adding in, 1 or 2 picks? Like, I don't know.
Right.
Chicago's interesting. Like, Levine is kind of an upside swing, where, that's probably a Russ and 2 firsts and maybe a young guy to Chicago for Levine. Now he's young and he's obviously really good, but he's got some durability issues, and that contract, depending on how you view it, could be viewed as an albatross. And he's got some knee issues, so like that's one that I think makes it's kind of in between like a role player and like superstar trade. It's more like a star trade or like, all star, whatever kind of leveling system you want to use. But I think LaVine would help, obviously minus defender. So that's kind of a concern there of adding another perimeter player who can't defend. But I think Toronto and Utah both make the most sense. Looking at Utah, like getting something centered on Mike Conley, but Malik Beasley or Vanderbilt as that second guy, and then Kelly Olynyk or Rudy Gay. I think they'd prefer Olynyk over Gay, but something Russ and a couple picks or a pick and 2 seconds to Utah for something like that, or looking at Toronto, get Van Vliet and Gary Trent. I'm sure they'd love to get OG, but I think that's probably one where they have to empty the cupboard, and I don't know if they're maybe they will for that one, but I don't know how if they necessarily view it that cut and dry. So I think those are the two that make the most sense. Of course, there's Detroit and Atlanta with the Bogdanoviches. I think they'd prefer Bojan over Bogdan, but can they throw Pat, Lonnie in a first for Bojan, Pat, Lonnie in a first for Buddy Hield? I think there's ways to upgrade in terms of getting a shooter, and I think that's really the main thing that they're looking at is a shooting wing. And then, potentially if they are trading Russ, getting back another playmaker, a Van Vliet, a Conley, someone that can either start or I guess most likely start, but Darvin loves Dennis, so we'll see if that's a competition for starting. But either way, kind of be able to run the offense when LeBron's off the floor. So to me, I would prefer Toronto between the two. I think any combination of two of those three guys. I'd probably prefer actually like Trent and Anunoby. That's just add some more size, upgrade the perimeter. Yeah. You can go
shooting.
Yeah, I mean, now you're kind of a little thin at like the playmaking, like point guard spot, but I think you can get by with Dennis, LeBron, and right. Austin. Dennis, LeBron, and Austin, I think is fine. And right. Maybe Pat's like I think Pat can even do some of that stuff if you really need him to in like second unit lineups, whatever. So or you can you can get a buyout point guard. Like there's always, I think point guard's like a spot where there's a lot of talent that you can kind of find out there. You can find a replacement level point guard, an vet minimum contract. It's hard to find wings, and if you could flip Russ for Gary Trent and OG Anunoby and 2 picks, and maybe you have to throw in Max and a pick swap or something. The one thing I don't think people have talked about enough is the Lakers can do pick swaps. They can do a 2028 pick swap. So technically, that can be viewed as like 2.5 first round picks almost. Right. Potentially 3. And then of course this summer, once the draft day, they can add in a 3rd first round pick as they have more options. But I think for them it's really looking for a shooting upgrade. Finding that wing or forward that can start and upgrade the starting group. And then, from there, I mean, I think an interesting thing too is like, can you do 2 deals? Can you kind of split the baby down the middle where, you trade Russ in a pick for something, and then you trade Pat, Lonnie in a pick for something. And, maybe again, it's not as good as getting a Kyrie or an all-star level guy, but you are, potentially getting 2 or 3 players back that just upgrade the collective talent on your roster. Because I think the Lakers are right. Like we see it on a nightly basis. They're right there. Like they've had so many of these games that, even take away even the reffing stuff, which we know that's 3 or 4 games right there that they could have had. Like there's so many games that have gone down to the 4th quarter where this team's, the small guards, the lack of shooting, the rush, the Russ issue, like all those things have kind of collectively weighed on the season. And I think if you can flip Russ and Pat and a couple picks and bring in some size and some shooting on the perimeter, all of a sudden like that roster makes a lot more sense. And I think that's a team that can go on a run in April. Like I think it's there that they have the opening. If LeBron and AD are healthy and playing at the level they've been playing at, like it's right there, but you got to make an upgrade, and that's going to cost you at least 1 pick, if not, most likely both.
I think they just got to go all in. I mean, the West is still mid, right? There isn't that much of a gap between. I mean, like you said, if you go on a run, if you strip out like 10 games in a row, You're right there. You're right there. I think the other thing too is adding these pieces. We have additional flexibility for next year, right? It's like we're playing free agency now at the trade
Yeah,
deadline.
exactly.
Because we initially there were so many reports like, oh, Lakers don't want to. They want to keep this cap space for who, right? There's literally no one
Right.
available for next year, next
Yeah,
off season.
it's not a good free agent
So
class.
it's not. And the second they made that trade for Rui, it kind of rang the bell that okay, another move is on the way. So I'm on the same boat as you, Jovan. I really like that Toronto deal. If we can
Who
get Gary
doesn't?
Trent,
Hell,
I don't know.
you started
I,
talking
I
OG
was gonna
and
ask
Gary
you.
Trent too. I'm like, all right, now we getting juicy out here. That
I will
sorry,
say
I don't
I
mean to
think
cut you off. Yeah.
more likely is just Van Vliet and Trent. I think OG, like OG himself is probably going to command 2 or 3 picks. So
Yeah.
like
Right.
I think then
OG is
asking
tough.
for Trent, like and Trent's value, heard different things, protected first or like a couple seconds, like so I think he's on that borderline where maybe that is a deal where they do both picks and like a pick swap and really just kind of throw it all in there. But I think like I think again, like as I've reported for weeks, I've always felt that the most likely thing was a smaller deal of Pat and a first for something, and just using that spot to upgrade the starting lineup. But I think with the way, I think that the Kyrie trade in part, or potential trade, kind of opened up the doors for trading Russ, and I think they've kind of realized like there are like there's a reason why Darvin doesn't close with him every game, and there are some concerns about if we make the playoffs, can we close games with Russ? Can we play him in pivotal moments? And how is he going to respond? Because I think for the most part, he's obviously been very professional, but I think sometimes when we ask him about it in post game, like he gets a little testy. He doesn't want to talk about certain things, and like you can tell it's bothering him. And that's fair. That's he's obviously a future Hall of Famer, top 75 guy. Like he has the right to be bothered by it, but it's just ultimately kind of just the fit limitation there of between him and LeBron. So I think honestly for both sides, I've been saying this for it feels like a year now. Like for both sides, I think they're better off going in different directions. I think Russ being in a different situation where he can be himself, he can start, he can play his 30 plus minutes, he can get his triple doubles, he can have the ball, like all those things that will make him happy, and that will be better for him. And for the Lakers, having a guy who can shoot and not be a spacing liability and not need the ball to be effective, and will I think try a little bit harder defensively. Like those things are really important, and those are things they're looking for. So I really think for both sides, it just makes so much sense to kind of go their separate ways and to kind of finally end this partnership that just hasn't worked. But it's just tough because the Lakers are going to have to give up at least a first in any Russ deal, and most likely 2.
That'd be dope to see Russ in a nice. I know it's not called that anymore. Up in the Air Canada Center, just collecting all the numbers. He could be the most triple doubles in Canadian basketball history. It would be great. No, but go ahead, Omar. Seriously.
No, I mean, I think, like you said, I think it just makes the writing's on the wall. I think it just makes so much sense. I wish, when we were heavily shopping for Kyrie in the offseason, I wish that was clear for them in the front office, and they should have just made the moves that were already there. Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, but
what are you going to do with them? What are you going to do with Russ? He's an expiring contract. You're either going to turn this into an asset, or you're going to re-sign him, or you're just going to let him walk. Jovan, I'm sorry.
Well, yeah,
maybe,
no, I mean,
we should ask
I'll
our
say
guest.
the one thing that I've been kind of not surprised by, but like a little surprised. Like I think the thinking from the Lakers side was, if we hold on to Russ, we can rehab his value. And if we get him to buy into this bench role and like, show that he's on board and like he's doing all the right things and and they've really played that up all season. Like his trade value is not, I would say it's a little bit higher than it was like 4 or 5 months ago, but it's not like markedly higher. Like, and already the Lakers have paid over half his contract, so it's not really like the number. I don't know.
I think there's 16 million left.
Something like that, like something around 16 million remaining. But like it's still viewed as like a negative contract that like teams just don't want to like take on and like don't want to deal with, because they kind of know like anyone taking him on, at least the teams that have been currently suitors and the Lakers have been talking to, they're not taking him on for basketball reasons. They're taking him on for financial reasons of, we want to dump these contracts. We want to get the Lakers picks.
Yep.
Like it's purely an asset thing, not we want to give Russ the keys to the offense and have him be like our star. So I think the fact that I think the Lakers made a miscalculation there on like thinking that Russ would be more valuable closer to the trade deadline than he actually was going to be. And it's just kind of played out now where like, again, like, you kind of see like there was a time when Russ versus a Spencer Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith would have been a no-brainer in Russ's favor. And that is just not the case right now. Like, I think both guys individually have higher trade value than Russ, clearly. So,
Jovan,
isn't
that? Go ahead. Sorry. No, isn't that why they had that 20 game mark? Or I remember they said, okay, 20 games in.
Yeah,
25 games,
they kept pushing it back. First it was the 20 game mark, then it was Thanksgiving, then it was Christmas, then it was now it's kind of been the trade deadline is sort of been the time, deadline. But we'll see. Obviously, there's still less than 2.5 days left for them to move him, but I think that contract has not gained the value that I think they were hoping it would.
Yeah.
And I think he's largely perceived the way he was perceived heading into the season.
Quick question. All right, so kind of to wrap up our trade options and scenarios, we got 3 guys on expiring deals: Pat, Lonnie, Russ. Jovan, if you had to predict today, post trade deadline, which of those 3 names are most likely to be traded?
I would say Pat. I think Pat is the most likely. I'd probably go Pat, Lonnie, Russ in that order. I think it's interesting how much like the kind of perception on Lonnie kind of flipped.
Right.
Sort of like with his injury. But yeah, I mean, I think that they just view it as like I think Max is someone they want to try to find a role for. Like it's been difficult just because they have so many guards and so many veterans that I think, they want to play a certain amount of time. But I think in a way, I've almost wondered if like there's an element of like just trying to boost the value of Russ and Pat in some regards, of just like, keeping those guys in the rotation to kind of show what they can do. I'm interested in, if those guys don't get moved, how do their roles change post deadline? Because I think at that point it just becomes, this is the group we have, and it needs to be about what is the best 8.5 man rotation. And it's not about feelings. It's not about this guy was promised this. It's about who are the 8 to 9 guys that are going to help us make the play-in tournament, win the play-in tournament, make the playoffs, and like try to go on a run. And I think those 8 to 9 players, if we're, if they're keeping this group, I think those 8 to 9 players look different than the rotation that has often been played. Like I think it's going younger, it's going bigger, and it's not as much as the small veteran guards. So I think that will be something that's kind of interesting, like depending on what moves are made. If they end up standing pat, I wouldn't be surprised. Standing pat, it's kind of double entendre there. I wouldn't be surprised if the rotation changes a little bit. That's what I'll say.
No more politics.
That's just, to be clear, that's just speculation. That's not something I'm reporting, or that's kind of my educated read on the situation.
Yeah.
You hear that, folks? Real quick before you hop in, Omar. Jovan has to say when things are reported. He's got to get them spell checked, man. I know you got your enemies on the timeline, brother.
I got a lot of enemies, man.
I am confident that you have to check all of these sources before you put them on theathletic.com, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Oh man. But one point, Omar, I think we were talking about this a little bit pre-show, has been Ham's just, infatuation
Oh yeah.
with, the three guard lineups, right, Omar? And this is something that, has been leaving Lakers fans confused, shocked, scared, concerned the entire season. I think it's interesting that, the theory of this could all be to, raise everybody's trade stock for when they finally do trade them. And this, Thursday could be the crowning moment of, let's see what those babies did that, led to, Lakers being 13th in the West. So while they were trying to raise trade value, they actually drop themselves in the standings, but we digress. Do you think that the Lakers, and I'm sure the front office has all the confidence in Darvin Ham and his decision making, do you get the sense that the team and the roster is still sipping the ham juice as far as what he's preaching on a game-to-game basis? Because the Lakers have lost a lot of heartbreakers, and a lot of games fans are wondering what's going on with these rotations, man.
Yeah, it's for my knowledge that they're still sipping the ham juice, so that hasn't changed at all.
Sounds disgusting.
Yeah, I think I think what I had a conversation with someone on the road trip, close to the situation, who was kind of explaining to me. I think their mindset is more so trying to put, like, they feel like the league has kind of gone positionless to some extent, and for them it's about putting the best players on the floor, and the players, right or wrong, and I think sometimes obviously has been wrong, that Darvin trusts the most are Pat and Dennis and Russ. And I think that they also view Russ and Pat more as wing defenders than guard or point guard defenders. So, Dennis for them is their point of attack guy. Russ, I do agree with, is better at guarding wings than guards. Like, put him in the pick and roll or having to chase guys, like, he can't do that really. But put him, post defense, ISO defense, like, he can check. He's really strong.
Wow. Yeah.
I think he's bigger than people think he is, and like he can check small forwards and that. Now, I think the bet, like we saw with Ingram, cooking Pat and Russ at different points. Like, I think the best scorers are just going to do that, with the size advantage. But I think they've had, and honestly, like, for as much as people want to get on Darvin, like, I think this is something, especially with a younger coach, like, I think this is something, it's going to ultimately be a learning lesson for him that I saw it even when I was covering the Clippers. The first year I covered them was the year they went to the playoffs and lost to the Warriors in the first round. And that was like that weird team where a bunch of role players, they had a bunch of older guys and like a bunch of younger. It was just kind of like everyone was either under 25 or like over 32 or whatever. And, Doc Rivers always kind of, and Doc's maybe not the best example because he kind of has always been veteran heavy, but like, it was like, no matter what, even if that Shea was on that team as a rookie, and it was like, even if Shea was having a good game, Pat was coming back in, Lou was coming back in. Like, he just trusted those guys over the younger guys. And I think that's kind of the default for most coaches is, unless it's a rebuilding situation, they're always going to kind of go with the veteran. So I don't agree with it. I think like, Troy Brown, Austin Reed. I mean, Austin's kind of been more of a closer when he's been healthy, but like, I think Austin, Troy, Lonnie in certain situations, like those guys should be closing and giving the team some athleticism, some size, some shooting. Like, those are, I think, the more important ingredients than, experience or veteran, whatever. But there's always locker room politics too. Like, Pat, you listen to his podcast, Pat thinks very highly of himself. And Pat thinks he should be a starter playing 30 plus minutes a night. Like, Russ clearly thinks highly of himself. Like, Dennis has a certain standard. So like, as much as in an ideal world, you can say like that stuff shouldn't play in, like that's part of a locker room dynamic. And there's always kind of politics involved and keeping certain guys happy. So I think Darvin can probably find a better balance for sure. I'm not trying to absolve him of blame. I think I'm not a fan person. I've written it. I'm I've said it before. Like, I'm not a fan of the 3-guard lineups. I think they should be retired. I'm not even really a fan of the 2-guard lineups. Like, I don't think Dennis and Pat should be starting together, but that's his own thing.
Right.
But like,
Yeah.
the 2 small guard lineups. Obviously, most teams go with 2 guards, but the baby guard lineups, I don't like that. But I guess like I'm just kind of explaining what was told to me from people close to the situation of like, they kind of view it as like more of a talent, going with our best players type thing, even if like we're at a size disadvantage. But I do think at some point, like you've seen, they've lost enough games that way that like you got to adjust at some point. And again, I think the adjustment's going to come in the form of a trade. But if it doesn't, I think the adjustment's going to come post trade deadline. But we'll see.
Real quick, what about Rui, right? So we've obviously invested in a trade and already committed to, signing him long-term, hopefully in the offseason. But I think last game he only got 18 minutes and, a lot of fans were just like, oh, why doesn't he get any burn? And I know he's had some like woes defensively, but, again, bigger size body, length and all that stuff. Anything on him?
I know that they're high on him. They obviously, made the trade, gave up 3 second-round picks, which like one kind of sneaky part of that trade that is now impacting them now is they traded their 2029 second, which actually means they can't protect their 2029 first-round pick, because often if you're going to put a protection on it, it becomes a second-rounder that year, but they don't have their 2029 second, so they actually can't protect their 2029 first. So already they kind of made an investment in Rui that could potentially affect them at the trade deadline in terms of protecting like they can only protect the 2027 one. So I think with him, there's an element of like he's still kind of learning the offense and the defense. Obviously he was just added a couple of weeks ago. I do. Again, I do think Darvin's default is the 3-guard lineup for better or worse. And I think that's kind of his comfort zone. Now, I will also say the progress in that game was like Russ didn't close that game. Russ, I don't even think played in the fourth quarter or barely played in the fourth. So I think like you kind of see the progress with Darvin in certain regards. But then there's also like the step back where Russ, he brings Russ back in like the Celtics overtime or, the Philly game or whatever. Like, I think more often than not, I think they've done better. Like if you look at some of Russ's crunch time numbers, he's really struggled. And just, I think, that execution heavy environment isn't always the best for him, in my opinion. And I think the numbers bear that out. But, I think, I don't have a great answer on Rui. I think it's more so just, again, like a comfort thing with Darvin, where he just prefers those 3 guys. And at the same time, too, I think they also view Rui more as a 4, and that's kind of the whole weird thing with like him and LeBron playing together, which obviously they've gone to with the starting group, which I like and I think makes sense. But I also think, that they're kind of viewing it like if there's a true legit wing, we don't know like if we want to put Rui or LeBron on that guy necessarily. So I think if you're obviously picking between the two, you're going to pick LeBron. So I think Rui's also kind of been a casualty of that, of them trying to find that wing defender that they don't necessarily think he is. So that's kind of, I think, a wrinkle to it. But I don't, playing 18 minutes or whatever, 18, 19 minutes, like I don't have a great answer on that. I think I also think Darvin's kind of becoming a little bit more desperate with his rotation, where he's having a quicker, trigger with taking guys out. And if someone's struggling, they're not going to have as big of a role. So that's another wrinkle where I think they, Rui didn't have the best game, but I do think he should be playing more than 18, 19 minutes for sure.
Oh, man. He's got to get his junkyard dog status. He's got to do a couple of, fight club fights. He's got to go through the ringer, man. Maybe a couple of those bounce house obstacle courses too. Then he'll be ready to get his minutes on the Lakers. Jovan Buha, man. Ooh, it is busy times for you, I know. So first of all, thank you for making the time, almost an hour strong, rocking with us on the Late Night Lake Show podcast. Appreciate you, my brother. We're going to let you get back to doing what you do best, and that's reporting on Los Angeles Lakers. Real quick, before you go, just leave the folks with this. By the time we talk next, whenever that is, will the Lakers have improved their roster via trade between now and the deadline?
Yeah. I know it's gonna blow up in my it's gonna blow up in my face no matter what I say. But yes, I'm gonna say yes. I think they're gonna make at minimum a small move of I think again the most likely situation is Pat Lonnie in a first or just Pat in a first to add a better starting caliber wing shooter. So I think that is at a minimum, but I also think if they get an opportunity to trade Russ and it makes a lot of sense in terms of the return, like I think they will do that as well, and potentially two separate moves. So I'm betting on at a minimum a small move, but I think there's also a increasing possibility that they do a bigger move that really reshapes the guard rotation, and I think leaves Laker fans most likely happy depending on what the move is. But I think if it's Utah or Toronto, they will Laker fans will be happy with that. One thing I'm watching for is we see how quickly Kyrie was able to turn a trade request into getting traded. It was basically 48 hours. So we got a little under 72 hours left, 66 or whatever. I'd be interested, like, by tomorrow or Wednesday, does like a star potentially demand a trade and put pressure on their team to get out of a situation, kind of just following the Kyrie blueprint of like, he was able to, and now granted, Kyrie is a different situation because of, all the stuff all of his history with Brooklyn already. So like, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I thought it was interesting how like we rarely see star demands get resolved that quickly. It's usually kind of a bidding process over multiple days or weeks or months, and that was not the case here. So I would be interested to just see if there's kind of like a sneaky star situation where someone just asks out and the Lakers could potentially jump on that.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when your boss hates you and you say that you don't want to work for him anymore. How quickly he'll get you up out of there. So good stuff, man. Jovan, appreciate you once again, man, for stopping by with us. We'll make sure to tap in with you soon. For everybody, thank you for rocking with us. Late Night Lake Show. Make sure that you hit that like and subscribe buttons right there on YouTube. If you're following us on the pod, you already know what to do. Give us that 5-star rating. Drop a review. Let us know how we doing. We got some more content coming out. Like we said, it's trade deadline week, baby. Oh, man, my blood pressure up and everything. We were supposed to record yesterday. Then Kyrie got traded. I don't know what's about to happen between now and when we drop this show, man. I don't know. Omar, you've been on the timeline. You've been making sure, DeMar DeRozan hasn't demanded a trade or anything like that.
Everything's clean.
Everything's cool. Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to end the show then just like that. Joe, I appreciate you, man. Omar, I'll see you on the timeline. Folks, we'll see you on the timeline. Peace.